This episode is sponsored by Sport Yogi, the app for athletes if you want to find the connection between your body and your mind. If you're looking to get into yoga, mindfulness, meditation, or you've been curious about getting into them, then this is going to be the app for you. It's designed to take these methods and deliver it to you in a way that you can understand without all the fluffy stuff, the woo-woo side of it that may be getting in the way for you, and deliver these techniques and tools that you can use both on the field and looking after your well-being off the field. It's going to be about looking out for your body, looking out for your mind, using methods around yoga to build flexibility, strength, balance, but also that mindfulness and meditation to understand your mind, understand the focus, presenting some calm in the body and being present in the moment. So if you're interested in trying these techniques out under a way in which you are going to understand a little bit easier and in context for your sport, then Sport Yogi app could be for you. You can find it on the iOS store for Apple and on the Android Google Play store. You can find it there. Just search Sport Yogi. You can also head over to sportyogi.com where you can find the links for it there. So it's either on the Apple or Android store. Just type in Sport Yogi or you head over to sportyogi.com today. So it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And as much as this week is an incredible week for bringing much needed attention to mental health, I want to talk about mental health for athletes and why it's so important and some reasons why it is important to look after it for you. But it's also worth noting that, yes, this is Mental Health Awareness Week, but mental health is not a weekly, one time in the year, 1 week in the year thing. It is a daily thing that you should be looking out for. And it's something you should be adding into your routine and something you should be aware of. And I encourage you to explore it and to understand it more if you haven't done. If you are already on that journey, and there are many people that already are, that are starting to explore that, then perhaps this week is a bit of a check-in. It's perhaps a way of looking at new ways and perhaps you can improve what you're doing and develop what you're doing, or even ways in which you can maintain the progress you've made. Perhaps you're feeling pretty good with where you're at with your mental health and your mental strength and resilience. And if you're in that sort of place, then perhaps it's starting to look in how you can help others and how you can inspire others to action. So that would be one reason I would encourage you to embrace this week of mental health awareness, just recognizing where you're at with it. Are you completely at the beginning? Are you starting to open up to the idea of it? Are you someone who has been willing to talk about it but haven't done so far? Or are you all the way to the point where you've really explored it and you perhaps are now looking to encourage others and inspire others to action as well? So whichever element or whichever end of that spectrum you're at, then I encourage you to embrace this week, embrace the openness of Mental Health Awareness Week, but recognize at the core of it, it is a daily thing. This is something we should be definitely talking about, and I'm so glad we are doing more and really putting into action, finding ways in which we can maintain that mental health and actually doing something about it, creating action from us speaking about it and doing something. So I'm so glad everyone is doing this, and I encourage you to continue the work that you're doing and perhaps even start that work. So well done if you are. It's not an easy thing talking about your mental health. I've had my own struggles with it, about embracing talking about it and being able to talk about it, but it's so worthwhile once you're able to. So let's get into talking about why mental health matters for athletes. So if you're a listener of this podcast and you've been listening for a while, you'll recognize that, or you may have seen that some of the common themes with the elite athletes that I speak to, these people that have been to the pinnacle of their game, one of the common recurring themes is how much they wished or they are glad that they worked on their mental side of their game. They never really talk about how they wish they put an extra rep in the gym or lifted more weight here and done another hard training session there. Those were the things that were almost they had done without even thinking about it. That's the stuff that they always embraced, but they really wished or were glad that they embraced that mental side so that they had clarity, a process that allowed them to look after their mental side of the game so that when the pressure hit, they felt more in control. And that's a really common theme that I've found throughout the podcast that I've had with a huge range of athletes from all different sports. they're very, very assured that the mindset and the mental side of the game is one of the most important parts of your game. And it really, really is. The physical attributes that you have, they can be so easy to jump into because that's the first thing we're taught when we're in sport or going into an event, going into a discipline. We're just taught to go straight into the physical, the physical, the physical. And very rarely do we take that time and learn the techniques that it takes to manage your mind, those skills of the mind. And that's really what it is. The skills of the mind are something that are so valuable when you hit that pointy end of whatever you're trying to achieve. When it comes to race day, when it comes to game day, you could have the best physique in the world, but if your mind is not right, it doesn't really matter. I'd almost put it like an analogy of you're driving a Ferrari, or you've got a Ferrari, finely tuned machine, but the driver's drunk. So it doesn't matter how finely tuned that machine is. If the driver doesn't know what it's doing or is dysfunctional, then you're not going to go very far and you're not going to go there quickly. So making sure that that driver is skilled, making sure that driver has complete control, and that is your mind. That is really what we're looking for. Yes, you can build your body, but if your mind isn't right, then you're going to really be up against it. And it's also such an advantage. Yes, there's more people talking about it, and this Mental Health Awareness Week is bringing so much more to it. But if you're the one that actually can take action and start doing something about it, you're putting yourself in a very small percentage early on that can have an impact in their performance down the line. And it may not be straight away. It will be down. There will be reflective moments in your career where you'll look back and go, that was my mindset. I'm so glad that I'd done this work on my mind and I'd bulletproofed my mind. I'd strengthened my mind. And that was some work that I put in, and now I'm seeing the reward for it. Yes, when we lift weights, we see the physical lifting of something, or we run, we see the times coming down, but it takes a little bit of time to see that change in your mind. But it is the most valuable, and it's probably the most, it has the most longevity in it. I would say that's the thing that will stay with you. Once you've learned it, once you've harnessed it, it's always a part of you and it's always with you. Yes, your strength will come and go in physical sense, and I'll talk about how your strength mentally can come and go. But once you've been there, done something and gone through a hardship and really gone through that tough time, you've built that callus in your mind. David Goggins talks about building calluses in your mind, and it's so true. Once you've done it, you've hardened yourself, and then you learn from that position to deal with it again if it does come up. So it is the most vital part of your game, and one that if you can begin to understand it, become aware of it, talk about it, learn how you can deal with it, where you can improve on it, open up to those vulnerabilities, open up to the improvements that can be made, the changes that can be made, and where you can learn new things, the possibilities become tenfold, if not more. And it's such an exciting place to be as an athlete when you understand your mental side of your game, because you could bring so much more control to what you're doing. You feel more confident. Yes, you're able to deal with your self-doubts, your anxieties, that little bit more. And you can start making the improvements in other areas that you really want to make those moves in, because you're in a complete control of your entire game and your entire self. And it's not always perfect. You don't always get it right. That's another big point in this, is that you're not always going to get it right all the time, and that's okay. I work on my mindfulness, my meditation. Do I get angry? Yes. Do I get agitated at people? Yes. But every time I do, I try to reflect. I make that time to be mindful of, can I improve that next time? Can I get better? And that's through just the awareness of my mind, understanding that it is an important part of me becoming better as not only an athlete, a sports person, but also a person, a friend, a boyfriend, a brother, a son, and it's important in everything. So taking it away from the game and into your life is a huge impact as well. The other thing, and the reason why it is so important, is riding the waves of success and failure. You're going to have, and again, with all of the interviews I've done with world-class athletes, is they recognize you're going to have failures. You're going to have successes and failures. And the most successful athletes I've ever seen are the ones that have this wave of emotion and successes and highs and lows, but that wave is much more shallow rather than having these incredible highs. And once they're in these huge highs and you're riding high and you maybe become a little bit complacent, they're a very high place to fall. And then you find the lows are incredibly low. So you're trying to make sure that these highs aren't so high to fall and the lows aren't these deep caverns that are almost feel impossible to get out of. By looking after your mental health, you lower that wave. You make that wave smaller and more shallow. So yes, you become high, but you become more grounded. You understand the success, but you keep to your consistent routines. You understand what got you there, so that in the event there is a dip and that failure occurs, it's not so much of a deep cavern to come out of. You're able to climb out of it a little bit easier, and it doesn't make it a less of a negative experience, but you're able to deal with that experience a lot quicker and a lot easier by understanding perhaps the triggers, the routines, the practices that you can use to get out of it. So once you've got that routine and those routines, and I won't talk too much about the different types of practices for your mental game now. This podcast will have many. But once you've found your routine, once you've found what works for you, once you've started to understand what works, what doesn't work for you, you've had that exploration of different things that have had good and bad experiences and outcomes, then you'll find that perfect routine, or that as good as perfect routine for you, and something that works well and you're comfortable with. And that's where that wave will start to lower and start to become more shallow, and a much more consistent practice, or you'll become a much more consistent player and person through that, because you'll understand everything that's going on around you. You'll be much more aware, much more mindful of what you're doing. So dealing with the highs and lows is a huge part of understanding your mental health, so that in the occurrence of something negative happening to you, you do not take it as badly as you possibly could and make it this super emotional and tragic event. It's something you can manage and deal with and move forward with as well. It's a part of life. And I think lastly, I'm not going to make this a long podcast. I'm going to say that as much as you start to learn about yourself and you start to have a better interaction with yourself, and you understand what makes you work and what brings the best out of you, you can then start to have those better interactions with those around you. You start to interact with your teammates, your friends, your family, and you're building an impact around you, and you're having an impact on people. You're building an environment around you, and that environment that you're creating will be one of camaraderie, will be one of friendship. It'll be one of this togetherness that you hopefully will feel. And you can start to, once you've taken care of your own house, you've got your own house in order, you can start to look out for other people. And I promise you, once you start to do that and you start to give for other people, and you not only get that sense of giving, and that releases all the feel-good hormones that come with it, you'll start to have that reciprocated back to you. And you can create an environment, especially if you're in a team, if you can be that one that can be open to change and show your vulnerabilities and show that you've made that progress through looking after yourself and looking after your complete self, then people will start to gravitate towards that. They'll understand it. They'll see you truly for what you are, and they'll respect that. And that is infectious for others. And in a team environment, that can create a very impressive group. And I say dangerous group, because you become dangerous. You can start to do anything. The possibilities of what a group like that can do. You may not be perfect. You may not all have it right. But if you can understand each other, if you can understand what makes people get into a good place and what makes people get it out of a bad place, not only because you've shown them what that is for you, you can start to understand that for them. You can be a little bit more empathetic to their situations, compassionate, but also that does also bring accountability with it. You can call people out for when they aren't doing the right thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But understanding where people are at, understanding what's making them tick is a big part of, once you've understood your own mental health journey, you can have that empathy with someone else and perhaps start to give the advice to someone else as well, which again builds that team togetherness. It builds that value. and you can achieve so many great things like that. And I've seen that work with teams. I've seen it not work with teams, and I encourage it. And especially for men, I'll be speaking to men here more than anything. Embrace the idea of your mental health. And I touched on it earlier. And if you find that saying mental health is not something that works for you, call it mental strength, call it mental resilience. If you know someone who's broken a leg and they've gone to hospital, got put in a cast, and then they've built their strength back through that rehab and that training that they've had to go through, when you see that scar on their leg and the sort of hardship they've gone through, we almost admire that person. But when it comes to the mind, we sometimes feel like as soon as someone's opened up about they've had a mental health struggle, sometimes it's getting better, but there has been, you can almost see the uneasiness in people that they're like, oh, that person's kind of broken. But flip it. Recognize that your mental strength is never really lost. It can be diminished, yes, but it's never really lost. It can always be built back. And that's through practice, that's through repetition, that's through training, that's maybe through rest, recovery, but that strength can be built back. And once you recognize that you can build that strength back, you can understand that it's okay to have those weaker moments, because like anything, if you're building your body, you have to go through moments of discomfort. You have to go through moments of breaking and then repairing the body. So if you're lifting weights, you're breaking muscles and then you're resting and repairing them. The same way, if you're breaking the mind essentially, and you're fracturing that mind in a way that it's going to harden itself back up and then come back stronger, that is a good place to be in. And seeing it, this ebb and flow of your strength. Okay, I'm mentally a little bit weaker today and a little bit, my strength isn't just there. So maybe I need to have that rest, recovery. Maybe I need to practice something a little bit more. I need to train a little bit more on my mind. And then I'm going to come back stronger. I'm going to see that strength built back over time. I'm going to start to overcome these things. And like I said, once you've built those calluses, once you've built that strength, when you hit an adversity, a setback that you perhaps once have already experienced, you're going to have the strength, the fortitude, the resilience, the know-how, the tools, the techniques to be able to do that again and again. And it doesn't mean that you may not fail. It doesn't mean that you won't fail. You may fail, but you will have another set of tools. You'll have another experience that will cushion that blow a little bit more, so that when it does happen again, you're stronger again and you come back. And that's really what building your mental health, understanding your mental strength could be for you. Again, if you don't like that word mental health, reframe it. And yes, everyone has mental health like they have physical health, and that is something that will be no doubt spoken about a lot throughout Mental Health Awareness Week. So find what works for you and embrace the fact that you do have this mental health, this mental strength to keep working on, keep practicing, start working on, maintain, develop, whichever way you want to look at it. And know that there are practices and techniques out there that you can do. For me personally, I use mindfulness, meditation, I use movement. My yoga practice is a huge part of me building mental strength, because it's a routine, it's uncomfortable, it's tough because I suck at it at some point, so I have to go through that real tough time. And that's where I've seen the biggest growth in my mind. And recognizing the drive, the motivation that I have for wanting to succeed at disciplines that I'm motivated to do, and I have a purpose, and I feel I have a purpose for. Understanding what your purpose is will build that drive and that motivation for you. So if you want to try out some of these techniques, these tools, then perhaps reach out to me at Lewis Hatchett on Instagram. You can find the podcast, lewishatchett.com/podcast. If you're interested in getting into yoga, mindfulness, meditation for athletes, in a context that works for you as an athlete, without that woo-woo side, without that spiritual side, then check out Sport Yogi, because this is an app and a community that we're building for athletes by athletes. So you can find that over on the Apple Store and the Android Store, so the iOS and the Google Play Store. Just type Sport Yogi and you'll find it. You can also head over to sportyogi.com where you can download it there. So look forward to you maybe trying those out. Or if you find a practice that has worked for you, I'd love to hear from you. Again, find me over on at Lewis Hatchett on Instagram. Let us know what has worked for you. I'd love to talk to you. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, then please feel free to head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. It really does help with boosting this podcast if you've enjoyed what you're listening to. And I thank you all for listening so much. And I hope you've enjoyed this one. And I will see you guys later.